live stream. I've just got back from Maidstone East. Went all the way out to Maidstone in Kent because our favourite Dan Abnett was doing a talk as part of the Maidstone Literary Festival, which I think is going on all week. And I happened to notice that it was a ticketed event where Dan would be talking about alien worlds, which obviously, if Dan's talking, I could literally, if the ticket had said Dan will ramble for 8 hours, I would have got a camp chair and gone out there. As it was a talk from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And when I got there, I sat straight in the front row, got there early, got in the front row. Yes, I'm very special in that way that I kind of rushed to the front. And I got there early, and there were I think there were 3 or 4 other people who also got there early. And I was delighted. One chap had a bag of about 6 books that he'd bought to sign, which made me feel better because I'd bought 2 and I was like, is this pushing it? So many people had bought books to be signed. And we were having some chat about Warhammer before Dan came into the building and sat down. Hey, Sean, welcome to the chat. How are you? What time is it in Oz? Lovely to see you. Hey, welcome, Gus. So yeah, it was off to a good start. Early doors, there was a bunch of Warhammer fans there, talking about all different kinds of things. As always, there was one chap who was, saying very edgy things. I think he was on the good side, so that was okay. But yeah, so the things I wanted to share, I want to talk about before I forget, the Warhammer things. So during Dan's talk, he spoke a lot about different books from the genres of fantasy and science fiction. And he was describing how it's harder if you decide to place your novel in a fantasy or a sci-fi setting. You're already having to work twice as hard and he gave this great example. He was like, you could easily write the guy walked across the Maidstone Bridge, and everyone would know exactly what that bridge was and what it's like to walk across it. Or if they didn't know the exact bridge, they could imagine it. But when you're creating worlds, you have to do so much work behind the scenes. So he gave some great examples of world building, of course, taking into consideration classics such as Dune and Lord of the Rings. It's just great. It's really great to hear Dan talk about other culturally relevant literature in the geek sphere. He spoke about his work on Galaxy of the Guardians, his work with Marvel. He had 2 independent comics there. One's called The Owl, and I think the other one is called The Trip, but I'm sold. I'm going to have to buy both comics. High in gear, live long and prosper. But we, as part of the discussion around world building, he did speak about Warhammer. And of course, everyone is like anticipating, what's the next book? What secrets can we learn? And he didn't obviously spill any secrets, but he did say the next Warhammer project he is working on is to do with a chapter, a faction that he hasn't ever written about before. And he's thinking he was saying people are going to be thinking, oh, this is weird. Dan doesn't normally write about this faction. And then he said, and he's experimenting with really stripping back everything and making things really understated and very direct. So rather than going into these fantastic, Dan Abnett purple prose streams, he's cutting everything back. And he said it really suits the character because she doesn't really say a lot. And so that was so we were all left to speculate, what could he be writing and who will this character be? So that was quite an exciting little tidbit to mull over. The next thing he said, which I think many of us kind of know or presumed or assumed, was that there are more Gaunt's Ghost books to come. We had an excellent conversation. There was a really good question from the audience about, I don't know how it came about, but Dan went on to talking about, an audience member said to Dan, do you have a ledger with the name of every character you've ever written? and an encyclopedia? And Dan said, yes, I do. Especially after I realised I'd inadvertently killed a character and resurrected him for Gaunt's Ghosts series, not once, but twice. And he spoke about how there were two characters that one had been shot in the mouth, one had been pushed off a high ledge, and they both reappeared. And they had been background characters, but because of their resurgence, he went back and did all the work to bring them back to life. They became characters in their own right, and they started driving the story. Hello, Southwest Badger. Hello, I'll do a wave. Hello, Ingir. Ingir saying, pure envy. Dan is a mad genius in the best possible way. He is such a genius. Gus says, I'm digging the book so far. Still new to this, currently reading False Gods. Gus, you have such an amazing journey to come. Yeah, he has spoken about that in our Gaunt's Ghost interviews. But the way he tells it with such humour was brilliant. And I think because he was talking to a lot of aspiring writers, sorry, I'm just bringing up the Emperor's chair. He was saying that it's great when you make a mistake and then you have to go back in to resurrect it or fix that mistake, and then it turns into something amazing that that can become part of the story. So that was really fun to think. That was really fun to hear. Sam Squanch said, he said in your last interview that his next two books are in the current timeline, right? I think so. My brain is very tired post-COVID and trying to remember all the stuff from this talk. So we'll have to go back and check that video. Hello, oh, what a great name. Grumund Einarsson. Where is that from? Norway, Sweden? What a fabulous name. I've never seen that little thing over an O before. It's not an umlaut, is it? Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't be getting wrapped up in the chat names, but welcome to the chat. The other really exciting thing he talked about, I'm not sure if he's mentioned this to me before. I feel like because we've talked about the Emperor so much, he probably has told me, but hearing it tonight really made my heart race more than the more than the COVID has been. Let me tell you, it's not funny getting COVID heart races. He was saying when he wrote The End and the Death, someone in the audience asked a question and said, did I finish that last question quickly enough? Anyway, the question from the audience was, do you keep an encyclopedia of all your characters? Dan said, no, I didn't until these two people died. And now he does. He has every single character has a full ledger. So talking about, we were talking about some question about how far can Dan take it when he's writing in an IP? And Dan, of course, spoke about how when you were looking after an IP, if you're writing for Batman, you have to keep Batman. You can't start writing stuff that wouldn't make him Batman anymore, or you wouldn't have a job and Batman wouldn't be Batman. It wouldn't be that IP. But he did talk about when he was writing The End and the Death, he had the Emperor's in it, obviously, and he had written some first person. So he'd written some pages from the view of the Emperor to the point where they were like, we're not really sure if we want you to write in the voice of the Emperor, but he did. He wrote a few pages, sent it to the powers that be to see if they would be cool with him writing as the Emperor. And they said, it's brilliant, Dan, it's absolutely awesome, but you can't put that in. It's just not where we want to take. If you start writing for the Emperor, everyone will. Nobody knows the Emperor, So that was like, oh my God, do you know all I could think after he said that was like, I need to break into his house. I need to go and read. And see what the Emperor sounds like, what goes on when the Emperor is narrating himself. I know, I'm absolutely mind blown. And again, I find myself worrying, what will happen if Dan retires or stops writing, and this could never be released. This could never, ever, we could never, ever see anything. But that's just life. But I just love the idea of one of my favourite Warhammer writers writing the point of view of the Emperor. I mean, what a dream. What a dream. He did say the Emperor is not a god, which, I really struggle with this. To me, the emperor is magic. You know, he has his own form of godhood. Um, yeah. So that was really, really interesting. So just go back into the comments. Thanks everybody. Oh, if you can please do a like for this live, that would be really helpful. If you're just joining us this evening, welcome. Please do a subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, you can have a YouTube membership, and you can also support me by Patreon. You can do a little donation, which Tony gave me a tenner the other night. I'm not even really sure why. Tony's just lovely. Thanks again, Tony. Tony missed book club, so we got to hang out with Tony last night. Sam Squanch says, I can huff my pandemonium copium. Excellent. No idea, but good for you. Guðmundur Einarsson says, Iceland, the sound. So is it Guðmundur Einarsson? Gorgeous. Tony gives me a thumbs up. Hello from Will. Lovely to see you, Will. Tony says, Dan is the emperor, surely. I think Dan is definitely ascended. Snake Emperor, God Emperor. Andreas Johannesson, hello, welcome. Will Logson says, I like Big E being this ineffable figure. If anyone does it, it's got to be Dan. No, I think no one will be allowed to do it, but it should be Dan. Gear says, he told everyone over and over. Sean says, I feel like if in 40k, if enough people worship him, he becomes a god. I agree. I think that's how it happens. Terry Pratchett, didn't gods get imagined into existence? Gray says, have you ever spoken to ADB, Aaron Dembski-Bowden, on or off camera? We have not spoken oral vocal, but we have chatted on Discord and emailed. And whenever I read something amazing by Aaron, I email and let him know. But I don't think Aaron can come on the channel, which will eternally destroy me. Yeah. So what else did we cover during the talk? Gosh, it was an hour. And honestly, I literally, the man spoke for an hour fluently. Every single thing was interesting. And very few ums and ahs. Whenever I do like a live monologue or something, I'm always going, so he was fabulous. He was really energized and really encouraging. Someone had this question about, I can see the pictures in my head, I can see the images of the story, but how do I make it become a story? And I was like, that's a really rough question. Like, how would anyone answer that? And Dan was saying, the hardest part of writing a book is the mechanics of the plot, because without that, the book falls apart. So what you've got to do is think of all these things, like bring the creative energy together, work on them, and then go away and let your brain figure it out. Go on to something, come back and build it. I feel like what he was saying was, take all these ideas, find a way to couch them within the mechanics of a plot. You know, first, he didn't say this, but I'm imagining like the Dan Harmon, Joseph Campbell story circle, or, you know, first, second, third act, and let your brain piece it together. So I thought that was amazing. Gus, I don't know if there'll be a video of this discussion. I thought it was a ticketed, paid for event. I thought it'd be really effing rude if I went and set up a camera and then post it on my channel. So I made notes to try and talk about it. Sean says, sounds like an amazing, energizing talk. It really was. Very, very inspirational. There was another amazing moment where some guy who I think writes, anyway, there's some guy and he was like, you write about quite esoteric, weird and wonderful stuff. Do you ever take inspiration from the kind of more conspiracy, kind of woo-woo thought stuff? And Dan goes, if you're talking about cryptozoology, yes, I do, and I'm fascinated by it. I was like, yes, Dan! Not in a like conspiracy theory, David Icke weird way, but he was saying he's absolutely fascinated when somebody comes and has a story like, I believe I saw the Yeti and I can describe it like this, and this is the atmosphere, this is what happened. And the guy in the audience was saying, you know, I've interviewed somebody who believes they've seen a dragon in Cornwall. And they were both agreeing, the questioner and Dan, that when someone feels they've seen or experienced something crazy, that they, whatever you think of it, like this is bonkers or this is real, that person is absolutely solid in their conviction. I saw this thing, I believe it. And Dan was saying that fascination, seeing how they tick, and also stuff like tarot, you know, crystals. He's fascinated hearing about how people relate to that. And, you know, doesn't necessarily believe in it, but takes a lot of inspiration from that. Oh, thank you so much, Transhuman Tia. Welcome to Space Marine channel, to membership. Thank you so, so much. That's so amazing. Thank you. Oh, how do I hammer? I don't know if I can hammer like emoji hearts on here. I've managed to put the lighting on, but normally if I was using my other, if I was on the laptop, I would be able to do loads of hearts. Thank you so, so much. Somebody else is hammering hearts for you. Tia, thank you so, so much for becoming a Mirror Manga YouTube member. It really does make me feel like a real YouTuber. So yeah, I thought that was a fascinating question. Also, I wish I could have hung around to speak to the man who had spoken to a man who believed he'd seen a dragon in Cornwall, because I was just there and I didn't see a dragon, and I wish I had. Hello from Canada. Tia, one of my best friends is Canadian. She used to live in beautiful British Columbia. I think her mum still live in Halifax, but she is now a snowbird and she does LA, Vancouver. Also, a lot of lush friends and friends, kind of work family in Canada too. Will Inspector, welcome Will, says, does he become a god or does the idea of him become a god? Can we have both? I like both options. Garrett Waldron, ADB is a really nice guy. Garrett, that is my impression. And I think he and Arbeiter Ian are pretty good friends. So I feel anyone who is friends with Arby is got to be a good person, because Arbeiter Ian hasn't really got any friends who are not nice. Gal Maraz, hello. Great question, Will. Gal Maraz says, Dan the man. Yin Gear says, this is how the walk works, isn't it, Will? Absolutely. Transhuman Tear says, the hero's journey. Love the hero's journey. Everything I learned about, this is not true. Something that lit a fire in my head about the process and learning about writing was listening to Dan Harmon talk about the process of writing. And that's really unlocked the love in my heart for hearing what makes writers tick, which I wish we could have all gone. But one of the really, I don't know if I should say this out loud. He said it publicly, other people heard it. So I sat down next to Dan and I said, do you mind if I take a picture so I can caption it? I've taken Dan hostage again. And then I said, I didn't ask any questions, Dan, because I felt that would be really cheeky, because I always ask you so many questions on my channel. He went, no, you should have done, I'm happy to have questions. And I said, to be honest, it was great just to hear you talk. Dan, I could have listened to you for 8 hours and just been really happy. Just like I said, bought a camp chair, go down there, bring snacks and listen to Dan for the day. And Dan said, well, maybe the next time, if we do this next year, you could come and interview me. And I said, don't say that. I'll have like a heart attack. One of my dreams is to interview Black library authors in the same room, just because I love interviewing over the camera. It means I can talk to people in Australia, America, Maidstone, wherever. But it's my dream to like be able to be in the same room with people and interview them and do it properly with nice cameras. And my dream job would be every 2 or 3 days of the week, I'd drive or go somewhere or meet with an author and interview them and like learn loads of stuff about their brain, maybe write an article, and start like an encyclopedia of a bit like a remembrancer, but for all of our favorite sci-fi and fantasy authors. I get really scared. I mean, this is definitely to do with my codependence, attachment, abandonment issues, but I get really scared of, I don't feel very teary, but I get really scared of all these amazing creators spoiling us with their gifts. And yes, they are leaving their legacy in the form of books, but the more good creative stuff out there, like the bigger the treasure trove for people to discover. And yeah, I just have this thing for writers and authors. Another thing Dan was saying is when you read a book, you open a book. He was so cool. This is so, so cool. I'm sorry, I'll get back to the chat in a second. But one of the cool things he said, the lady before him came and said, just so you know that if there's a firearm, get out, run out the building. Dan started his talk by saying, okay, I just want to make sure everyone knows how many exits there are. Can you all see an exit? There's one there, there's one there, there's one there. There's like 5 ways to get out of here. But actually, there are thousands of, feeling teary again. Actually, he said there are thousands because every book in this bookshop is an exit. It's like a doorway. It's a doorway into another world. And you could sit down with a book for 3 hours and be completely transported. And you're like, oh my God, I need to feed the cat and I'm hungry. And I thought that was beautiful. And it's that kind of book magic that would be my dream. Anyway, so can you imagine potentially this time next year, I might be interviewing Dan Abnett in person. But, even if we can't do that and that doesn't happen and he does it by himself or he doesn't get invited or I don't get invited, the fact that he would say that to me, where I am such a little swat, if I know I'm interviewing someone, I want it to be the best and I want to cram in as many questions. I know whatever questions I ask, I'm going to anger a bunch of Warhammer fans because I always forget there's so many questions, but yeesh. It feels good. Feels good just to big people up because they're creating something that is making humans happy. And yeah, I love that. I really, really love it. I will never stop appreciating and loudly and proudly appreciating people who create stuff because there's this amazing Cahill Gibran quote, and I think I've quoted it before, but it's something like, if the flute players and the storytellers come to your market for, for what they create is raiment for the soul. Anyway, sorry for going all Lisa Evangelista there. But yeah, what bloody great experience going to this talk. Tia says, it's all good. I love your insight on books. Thank you, Tia. Ingir says, the human mind is the most curious thing. Agree. Gray says, when will you read Brothers of the Snake? Read that or Fell Cargo, the pirate novel by Dan Abnett, and have him on again. Well, we'll definitely have him on again, Gray, 100%. I do need to read Brothers of the Snake. I'm going to write that down. I think, is it on my list? Ian and I have a list of books. But also, Gray, if you become a Mirror Manga YouTube member or a Mirror Manga patron, you can vote on what we should be reading and you can get early access. So I'm just trying to plug those things a little bit more. I am actually writing this down as well. Brother of the Snake, Fell Cargo. I'd love to read a pirate novel. We've just missed the Pirate Week or Pirate Day, whatever it is. So there we go. I've written those down. Sean Julie says, head explodes. Tia is thanking Tony. Will says, Brothers of the Snake is dope. I second that, especially since you're far enough into Ghost to know the secondary characters. Okay, a vote from Will as well. Tony says, got the feeling you may just have slightly enjoyed today. Do you know what, Tony? I feel so ill still. I have had, my heart's racing. I'm super tired. My legs are hurting. I've got aches in my ankle joint, my hip joints, backache. I've had this wild headache. Thank God, touch wood, the headache's mostly gone. Had this wild headache that lasted more than a week. And on Monday, it was so bad, all I could do was sleep and cry. And even when I rushed to get the train, my heart went. I actually had a blood test. This is how in my head I had a blood test yesterday. And when I was seeing the nurse, I said, I know I'm just here from a blood test. Would you mind checking that I'm not having a heart attack? Because I'm having chest pains and this is happening. She looked at my file where it says, Mira is very anxious. And she went, I'm absolutely going to check everything for you. I also had an ECG on Wednesday. And she said, you're fine, you're not having a heart attack. But I was so glad I could make it. I'm going to have to go to bed. And then tomorrow I've got a full day of work. I'm doing some Trench Crusade work tomorrow. if you like Trench Crusade, you'll know what faction this is. And maybe that will tell you something about me. Nothing good. Anyway, I really, really enjoyed today. I was so grateful that I went, because I had to go and do something this morning, which I'd planned for ages. And I thought, I really want a massage because my back hurts. But if I have a massage, then I might be too crook or feel not good enough to go see Dan. So I came home, did some work, and then went out. And I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I'm making this live now, because if I did it tomorrow, I'd forget everything. Tia says, it's hard to talk to someone you admire and remember everything you wanted to ask. Ingir says, don't worry, you're doing a fantastic job. And thank you. I certainly hear about it when people are displeased. So thank you. Appreciate that. No need to have envy, Ingir. Everything I discover, I will share. Adam Russo. Hello, Adam. Welcome. Your questions are good. I don't like Warhammer fan questions as much as I like hearing questions about writing and concepts. Love hearing about the headspace authors have about their own work. This is it. Like, I think we get like levels and layers. So the main product, the main thing we get is the book. The second thing we get is where that book places us or leads us within the IP. The third thing, which is secret, is the author's feelings and inspirations on that book. The fourth thing is the author's process and the working systems that they bring to that. The fifth thing is the author's feelings and thoughts and relationships with that book. It's just so much. It's so splendid. It's like dissecting the pyramids, like how they were made one at a time. So cool. Tony says, September the 19th was Talk Like a Pirate Day. Well, let's try and read Fell Cargo before September the 19th, 2026. Gray says, which ADB novels have you read? Also, I was going to ask why Aaron can't come on. Is he opposed to interviews or he prefers to stay private? I have read, oh gosh, my brain. The last ADB book that I read was Soul Hunter, which is the first of the Night Lords trilogy, which I promised to read when I got to 10k followers. Thoroughly enjoyed. I think I also read an ADB Heresy book, The Last Heretic, which I'm hopefully going to talk to a different Black Library author about. Some Black Library authors are still so tied up in Games Workshop that they are either too busy or just unable to come and talk about stuff. And that's his choice. And I totally respect that. And he's been for a fellow that has said, I'm sadly unable to come on your channel. I like what you're doing. You know, could not have been a nicer rejection. And I'm old enough now to understand rejection is protection, and it's all good. If people don't want to like do stuff with you, that's cool. Like, that's all good. But the way that he was so kind and encouraging, but just said, can't be part of it, like what you're doing, was wonderful. It was really validating. And the other thing is, these authors that I'm approaching are generally decades in a business of writing amazing books for amazing IPs. You know, like, for instance, Dan has written for Marvel. He's written for games. He's wrote Alien Isolation. You know, all these authors. James Swallow has written for a bunch of, you know, I think Thunderbirds and Star Trek. You know, all of them are inured and professional. So when any of them have anything positive to say, or even take an email from me, have a conversation just to say, appreciate what you're doing, don't want to work with you, can't do this with you. That's fucking, sorry, I did a swear. That's huge to me. That's enormous. It's like a blessing. Because like, can you imagine how many people like bombard these authors all the time? So yeah, when you think about the professionalism, like, this is people's careers. And, you know, think about if you have a job and on LinkedIn, how many people are like, oh, can I just chat to you about this? You know, I'm one of those. So mad respect. These people are profanely talented, obscenely talented and busy and have their own lives, families. So yeah, the fact, it makes me actually really happy. Like, I think when Games Workshop was setting up Black Library, they got some good guys in. Like, I'm very, very respectful for everyone talking to me because I appreciate their time, but they don't have to be kind. And most of them are really kind, gentle humans who have the most beautiful brains to excavate as well. Will says 3 big 40k releases today. Void Scarred looks good. Void Scared or Void Scarred, both great names. It's Eldar Pirates. That does sound interesting. Remnant Blade looks cool as well. It's Night Lords. Here's the thing. If Games Workshop decided to send me free books, 100% I would stop what I was doing outside of Ian and my own channel, and I would read them and review them or interview the authors. But I think the path we're on at the moment is okay. And for any of you who've seen my book unboxing, I have so many old school books to go through. I'm always really excited to hear about big 40k releases. I should say at the moment I'm reading Hell's Reach by ADB, and I'm reading the latest Heresy book that we're on. I literally just put it down and COVID brain is not allowing me to remember the name of that. So Richard Snowden, I was there, and I agree, could listen to Dan all day. I got him to sign my old battered Eisenhorn omnibus for me and my late father. It was the last book he read. Richard, 2 things. Firstly, why didn't you come and say hi? Because I sat by myself. I feel like I was one of the only people with like an empty seat next to me. That's okay. Dan knows I have no friends apart from him and Ian and the other authors that I harass. And the other thing is, I will cry because the whole reason I got into this hobby and I am brave enough to talk to authors and the depth of literary knowledge I have about, you know, sci-fi and fantasy classics, you know, Sword of Shannara and Terry Brooks and Dune and, you know, all those Fahrenheit. Everything that I have in my lexicon is because my dad really loved sci-fi and let me watch Star Trek with him and let me read his books, even though they were really, really too old for me. And he bought me Piers Anthony books and he helped me write my first letters to Piers Anthony. And every time I do a thing, like that empty chair next to me, I would have loved my dad to come with me. And my dad would have so loved to meet Dan. And whenever there's I think I've said this before, whenever there's a new Star Trek, I always think, oh, I wonder if my dad would have liked this one. Like, I would have really liked it if my dad and I could have watched Discovery together, because I do a little podcast and my friend Kim got us invited to a panel with the actors from Discovery, and I just think about, I think my dad would be really happy that, yeah. Oof, hang on, water. I think my dad would be happy that I find so much comfort in the worlds that he introduced me to. So thank you for sharing that, Richard. Everybody needs a sci-fi dad. And to get a little bit more deep, like, whew, sorry, normal viewers will be used to me crying all over the internet. Also, COVID makes me very emotional. Post-COVID, I should say. My dad was always really, really kind. And he had a lot of faith. He was quite a fearing, you know, God-fearing, kind fella. And I think that the books, even though he never expressed when he was upset, I think the books gave him a little escape, a safe place. And, you know, when I get anxiety, it's quite hard for me to turn off, but books also do that for me. So what a gift sci-fi dads are. Everyone should have a sci-fi dad or be adopted. Whew, sorry about that. Thank you for staying with me. Gush said, just finished a reread of Queen of the Black Coast, great Conan pirate tale. I love Conan. Is it Howard who writes Conan? And he wrote something like, I can't remember, but there was a line like, he describes sadness as emeralds falling to the bottom of a dark sea. Oh my God, that prose, that Conan prose, gorgeous. I'm going to write down Queen of the Black Coast. If I make a video about Queen of the Black Coast, we'll get 45 people watching it over a year, but why the heck not? Queen of the Black Coast. Adam says Iron Sultanate rules. Adam knows Trench Crusade. Sean says, you've had a rough time of it. Glad you could push through everything and get to the talk. Thank you, Sean. I do feel like poor me, poor me. I am in victim mode a lot, but today I'm not. I'm in grateful mode. Carl King says, you got this. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Gal Maraz says, I'm a big believer in the anthologies. They're great for small doses of grimdark. Yes, my current heresy book is... This is going to annoy me. Let me grab it. Here we go. Talk about ennui. Yeah, just been reading Shadows of Treachery. Just finished The Silversmith by Graham McNeill and Raven's Flight by Gav Thorpe. Both great. Also reread The Caban Project. I'm speaking to Graham McNeill really soon about his new project, Wolves of Winter and Lords of the Lance, Warhammer fantasy novel, if anyone's interested. Sorry, Age of Sigmar, whatever it is. That is lovely, Richard. What did Dan sign the book to? What did he sign in the book? David Gibbs said language. I'm so sorry. I do try not to swear. You know that. Tony says it's okay to swear. It's past 11 p.m. Gal Maraz. Haha, Mira did a swear in gear. Nobody tell on her, guys. Gal Maraz, I still want that on a t-shirt. What? I did a swear. Will says void scarred. Thank you. Keeping with pirate thing. Gray says Sevatar's trilogy is amazing. Who writes that? Who's Sevatar? Savage Weapons, Prince of Crows. That sounds good. I'm into crows, ravens, and all that shenanigan. Good old Corex. Sevatar's trilogy. I've written that down. I'll look it up. The first two in Age of Darkness. Oh my God, Age of Darkness books. Now I'm interested. Okay, Savage Weapons. Like I say, Gray, for these to get on the short list, do by all means join the Mirror Manga membership and Patreon. Gray says they're all by Aaron. He practically built the Ninth Legion fandom through those three and the trilogy. Richard said, I didn't realise you were there until someone had pointed you out as you were leaving. So sorry for setting you off. Do you know what, Richard? Never ever apologise for making me think about my pops, because he was a wonderful human. And I hope I didn't set you off too. Garrett Waldron. I remember the first time I met Dan Abnett and I asked him about why he killed off a certain character. And he just looked at me and said, did you care? Did you, Garrett? Did you care? Richard says, bless you. Bless you back, Richard. Gray said, Dad would be proud. Mira, he always his princess. That will make me cry again. I was his brave little sausage. And his nickname for me was Mimi. S6. Hi, Mira. Found Ian through IGN, then you through him. And finally, I caved and reached out to Quipster Nerd and reached out. Quipster Nerd peer pressured me into starting to read 40k novels. Is that the Quipster that I know who has been on my channel talking about Emperor's Children? Because good that you've been peer pressured into reading 40k. David said, I think he'd be proud. Oh, thank you, making the quants. Old school hearts back at you. Thank you for the heart, Gal Maraz. Tony says, I remember September 1969, a young curly-haired 5-year-old Tony was allowed to watch the original Star Trek by my dad. That's why I'm here. Oh, I love it, Tony. Love it. Will says, my granddad got me started on sci-fi with Star Trek and Quantum Leap. He's from England. I'm American. Oh my God, Will, I always thought you were Brit. I don't know why I thought that. And hearing him read to me was such a soothing experience as a kid. I used to love Quantum Leap. Oh boy. Gal Maraz, Richard E. Howard was wonderful. Gray. I was literally mentioned Prince of Crows and you show you're reading Prince of Crows. It's so good. Where did I show that? Oh my God, yes. Prince of Crows. So it's a trilogy, is it? Okay. Night Lords. I was really wondering why so many people like Night Lords, because they're horrible. They treat people so badly. Then I realised Aaron Dembski-Bowden's written their books, and that's why people love the Night Lords. Gal Maraz, that's the book I'm on. I'm trying to keep up with the book club. Good for you, Gal Maraz. So am I. Oh my God. He signed it to me and my dad and wrote Repent Heretic. It was really cool to meet him. Yay, Richard. That's amazing. I love Dan and thank you so much for sharing about your dad, Richard. Wonderful. Sevatar is the first captain of the Night Lords. Of course. Garrett says, yes, I cared. That's why I asked about it. Will Sevatar was the first captain of the Night Lords during the heresy. He's one of the undisputed best duelists in all of the legions and has a really cool philosophy for his legion and their tactics. What are the Night Lord tactics? Are they not just maim, sever, destroy? Prince of Crows is the last story, Shadows of Treachery, so you'll be there as soon as you're reading it now. Thank you, Gray. Yingir says, that is why Dan killed him, to make you feel something while reading. Absolutely. Dan knows exactly how to tug on those heartstrings. Gray says, Age of Darkness, the anthology contains Savage Weapons perfectly. Perfect. So where was Savage Weapons then? Age of Darkness is Savage Weapons. Prince of Crows is in Shadows of Treachery. And there was one other you mentioned. We'll find that. Anyway, it's getting really late and I have got to get my beauty sleep. But I thought I'd show you the books that I took to Dan to get signed. First, I took Interceptor City, which I think is possibly my favourite ever Warhammer book. So I asked him to sign this for me. And he wrote, to Mira, Daka 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 Daka, Dan Abnett, which is lovely. And then Dan Abnett Embedded. I don't know if you've seen all of my interviews with Dan, but we did talk about one time where he'd written a book post a weird brain thing he'd had as part of his epilepsy and how it affected what he was writing at the time. And we were discussing whether that his brain behaving in a certain way caused him to reflect and be inspired to write a certain way. And we talked about this book, Embedded. It's about a soldier who gets chipped. So I'm really excited to read this. It's outside of Warhammer. It's a freestanding sci-fi book by Dan. So I'm very excited for that. And in this one, I just got Tamira, Dan Abnett. But I should say, I have had so many books. Oh, good night, Gray. Good night, Galmaraz. Good night, Tony. I've had so many books. Like, I feel really cheeky turning up with books because he signed so many for me already. Well Inspector says, someone needs to find the Happy Meal comics so Dan can sign them. He did mention them in this. He mentioned them in this chat, which I thought was wonderful. I know. Let's track down the Happy Meal comics. Yeah. But thank you all so much for hanging out with me. What a splendid talk that was. If I do find out that anyone recorded it or it's available online anywhere, I'll try and put a link to it in the comments below. If anyone's just found me this evening, perchance, please do consider a like. If anyone's just found me this evening, stumbled across the channel, please feel free to do a like or a subscribe. You can also help out in a monetarily focused manner by doing a membership or a Patreon or doing a super thanks in the comments. But really, anyone just showing up and being around when we're doing these or watching the videos is very, very awesome and validating and inspiring. So thank you for being here. Grimdark Mackie D. Oh my God, aren't Mackie D already quite grimdark when you think about it? Oh, thank you, Will. Lovely to hear a bit more about your origins, and thank you for letting me share. Sean says goodbye. Thank you, Gus. Fun chat. Garrett Waldron, like, comment, and subscribe. Yes, that was what I was battling with. Thank you so much. So lovely, Richard. Great to be in the same author sphere as you for an evening. Take care of yourself. And yeah, see everybody tomorrow. Let's hope I finish my work in time for the Drifter. Good night, friends. Take care of each other.